When the first strange signals appeared on the deep space scanners, no one in the research team paid much attention. Signals came from thousands of planets every day most, or just background noise, or leftover waves from old stars. But this signal was different. It repeated in short bursts, then long bursts, almost like a pattern. The team gathered around the floating screens, whispering to one another, trying to understand what they were hearing. They didn't know anything yet about the small blue planet the signals came from. It was just one more world in a giant spiral galaxy. Nothing special, nothing powerful. Still, the rumors had already spread far beyond the research lab. Across different star systems, different species had been talking about this same planet for years. Many believed it was home to the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, creatures who could destroy planets, fight endless wars, and turn peaceful places into chaos. No one really knew if those stories were true. They had never met the species face to face. But fear spreads fast when stories are repeated again and again. Back at the research station, an observer known simply as the Traveler was called to the control room. He was not chosen because he was strong or brave. He was chosen because he was patient. He had spent most of his life studying distant worlds quietly, without jumping to conclusions. That made him different from most explorers, who often looked for danger before anything else. When he arrived, the lead researcher pointed to the glowing blue spot on the screen. "This is the planet," the researcher said. "The one everyone talks about?" The Traveler leaned closer. The planet looked peaceful from a distance, calm oceans, clouds swirling gently, sunlight reflecting like silver across the surface. It looked nothing like the frightening place described in the stories. How could such a world be home to the most feared species? The researcher played the recordings collected from the planet. There were loud explosions, urgent voices, dramatic music, and people shouting. At first, it sounded terrifying, but something felt strange. The Traveler tilted his head, listening more carefully. The recordings didn't feel real. They felt acted. He didn't say anything yet. He knew better than to give opinions before gathering real evidence. The council had assigned him one task: observe the species from afar and report the truth. Not the rumors, not the fear, only the truth. Over the next few days, the Traveler prepared a small observation craft. It wasn't meant for landing or contact. It was only meant to hide in orbit, invisible to the humans below. He loaded it with long-range lenses, sound collectors, and emotional pattern analyzers. His plan was simple: watch quietly, learn slowly, and never interfere. When the ship finally left the research station, he felt a mix of excitement and caution. He had studied hundreds of planets before, but this one was different. This one carried too many stories, too many half-truths, too much fear. He wondered if the galaxy had misunderstood everything from the start. The journey took several days. When he finally reached the space around the blue planet, he could see it clearly for the first time: mountains, oceans, forests, lights from cities glowing like tiny stars on the night side. It looked alive. It looked fragile. It looked nothing like the home of a monster species. He let the ship float into a silent orbit. Then he activated the observation lenses. The first thing he saw was a family walking down a busy street. They carried bags, talked to each other, laughed, and looked tired in the way living beings do after a long day. They didn't look dangerous. They didn't look violent. They looked normal. He watched longer. A few streets away, a person stopped to help an older stranger cross the road. Another person lifted a child who had fallen. Cars slowed down to let people pass. Someone shared food with a friend, sitting on a bench. The Traveler expected fear. He expected aggression. Instead, he saw cooperation and small moments of kindness. Later, he focused the lenses on another area. He saw two people arguing loudly. Their faces were red, their hands moving in frustration. This was closer to the behavior he had expected. But then something surprising happened. They stopped shouting, took deep breaths, and walked away from each other without fighting. One of them even apologized that the traveler wrote down everything in his notes. He didn't judge. He didn't rush. He simply observed Dot. As hours turned into days, he began to see a pattern. Humans were not creatures of pure violence or pure peace. They were both. They could be loud, emotional, and unpredictable. Yet they were also capable of deep care, sacrifice, and imagination. The traveler found himself watching more and more. Every day brought new pieces of the puzzle. Dot. One day he watched a group of friends sitting near a small lake, talking about their dreams. Another day he saw workers building something together. On another, he saw a person feeding birds, moving slowly so they wouldn't fly away. He also saw arguments, accidents, and moments of sadness. But even in these moments, he noticed something interesting. Humans tried to comfort each other. They tried to help. Sometimes they failed, but they tried. It was nothing like the old stories. The galaxy had painted humans as uncontrollable destroyers. But from what he saw, they were more like struggling survivors, emotional, flawed, hopeful. Still, he needed to understand the source of the frightening recordings. He listened again. Some sounded like dramatic fights, huge battles, roaring explosions. But after watching real human life, he realized those sounds didn't match the planet's actual behavior. He did deeper analysis and discovered something surprising. Almost all the fear-based signals came from human entertainment movies, shows, dramatic audio, fictional stories. The humans weren't actually blowing up their cities every day. They were telling stories for fun, for art, for imagination. Other civilizations had mistaken these fictional stories for real events. The traveler felt a quiet shock. So the galaxy had feared humanity for no reason. The misunderstanding began because no one had bothered to check the source carefully. He continued observing. One night, he saw a person sitting alone under the stars, tears running down their face. Another person approached and sat beside them quietly, not saying anything, just offering company. The traveler watched this simple moment of silent support and wrote it down carefully. Moments like this told the truth better than any broadcast. Another day, he saw people waving at a passing parade, laughing and cheering. He saw street vendors selling food, children chasing each other, a person helping someone lift groceries, another giving directions to a stranger who was lost. He captured hours of this footage. He sent small samples back to the research team, but they didn't respond much. They still believed the myths. The traveler knew he would need more than recordings to change their minds. He would need undeniable evidence that humans were not the monsters the galaxy imagined. One evening, as he watched a small coastal town from above, he noticed something that stayed in his memory. A storm was coming. Clouds gathered like mountains in the sky, winds growing stronger every minute. People rushed inside, secured their windows, and brought their pets indoors. When rain began to fall in heavy sheets, the traveler expected panic or chaos. Instead, he saw neighbors checking on each other, offering help and making sure the elderly were safe. When a street began to flood, a group of people worked together to clear the drains so water could flow out. He saw teamwork where stories claimed there would be violence. He saw care where the galaxy expected destruction. By the time the storm ended, the townspeople were tired, soaked, but still smiling and helping each other clean the streets. The traveler watched in silence. He felt something change inside him. He no longer believed he was studying a dangerous species. He believed he was studying a misunderstood one. The galaxy feared humans because humans were emotional, expressive, and full of dramatic creativity. But those qualities were not signs of danger They were signs of depth. He knew his report would challenge everything the council believed. He knew many would refuse to accept it. But he also knew the truth mattered more than old rumors. He looked down at the blue planet again, glowing gently in the night. There was still so much to learn. So many stories hidden in the daily lives of people who woke up, worked, laughed, argued, dreamed, cared, and struggled. The traveler took a deep breath. This was only the beginning. For many years, the galaxy had believed there was something terrifying about the small blue planet. No one had visited it, no one had spoken to its people, and no one had truly understood their behavior. Still, the fear spread like wildfire, passed from one generation of alien species to the next. They all repeated the same thing. The beings on that planet were too emotional, too loud, too destructive, and too unpredictable. The traveler, who was still observing from orbit, knew those beliefs were wrong. Every day he watched humans living normal lives, working, helping, arguing, smiling, and learning. But even as he collected evidence, a question remained in his mind. How had such a huge misunderstanding begun? The deeper he looked into the galactic records, the stranger things became. Centuries ago, some alien species had intercepted human radio signals. These signals were loud, full of dramatic voices, explosions, crimes, chases, and emotional speeches. The aliens didn't understand that humans used these signals to send entertainment across their planet. They took every word literally. A fictional disaster scene was taken as real history. A dramatic movie fight was treated like a daily human activity. A tense conversation from a show was believed to be a true crime happening live. Even background music confused them. It sounded like preparation for war. Because of this, early alien civilizations wrote warnings in their records. Do not approach the blue planet. The species is unstable. They fight all the time. They destroy cities. They cannot control their emotions. None of them knew they were judging humans based on movies, radio dramas, action stories, and news segments taken out of context. As the traveler read these archives, he felt a strange mix of amusement and sadness. It was almost unbelievable that such a misunderstanding had shaped the entire galaxy's view of Earth. But fear spreads. Faster than truth. The traveler spent hours reviewing the old reports. They were full of confusion. One alien researcher had claimed humans destroyed their world every week. Another claimed humans could move mountains with their anger. Another believed humans fought giant creatures daily. No one had stopped to ask, is this real? The traveler adjusted the lenses on his observation craft and looked down at the planet again. Humans were busy with simple routines, walking their dogs, waiting for buses, cleaning their homes, shopping for groceries. It was nothing like the dramatic scenes described in the galactic records. He recorded a person sitting by a river, quietly sketching the scenery. He watched a group of children running across a field, laughing as if nothing in the world could ever scare them. He saw people in parks, people helping others carry heavy bags, people stopping to admire the sun setting behind tall buildings. There was emotion, yes, but there was also peace. He knew the galaxy needed to see this. But the galaxy did not like changing old beliefs. Once a rumor became a legend, legends grew into fear, and fear became law. Many star systems had already banned travel anywhere near Earth. Some even taught their young ones to stay away from the dangerous humans. The traveler wanted to show them the truth, but he also wanted to understand more. He began analyzing the emotional patterns of humans. The data was surprising. Humans were capable of strong anger, but also strong kindness. They felt happiness deeply, but they also felt sadness with the same intensity. Their emotions were not wild, they were simply powerful. And instead of hiding them, they expressed them openly. This was unusual for many alien species who valued calmness above everything else. To them, human expressions looked frightening. A raised voice seemed violent. A strong laugh appeared chaotic. Even tears confused them. How could a species cry from sadness and also cry from joy? To aliens unfamiliar with these emotions, it all looked unstable. But to the traveler, it was starting to make sense. One evening, he listened to an intercepted broadcast. It was a dramatic scene from a movie. The characters were shouting, running, and trying to save each other. The music was intense. The aliens who heard this long ago believed humans lived like this all the time. The traveler smiled softly at the misunderstanding. Then he redirected his lenses toward a quiet neighborhood. He saw people finishing dinner, turning off lights, tucking their children into bed, checking on their pets. It was peaceful, calm, ordinary, nothing like the broadcast. He saved 2 recordings, side by side, one of the dramatic broadcast and another of real human life. He knew one day he would use both to show the galaxy how wrong they had been. As days passed, the traveler learned more about human culture. He discovered that humans loved stories. They wrote books with impossible adventures, movies with dramatic plots, music filled with emotion, and shows with scenes that made people laugh, cry, or feel afraid. Humans created these things because they enjoyed exploring their own emotions. What the galaxy had misunderstood was that humans didn't live those stories. They imagined them. Their creativity had been mistaken for violence. Their drama had been mistaken for reality. Their passion had been mistaken for chaos. Traveler wanted to share this discovery with his own people, but he knew they wouldn't believe it yet. They needed more proof. They needed something undeniable, something real. So he continued watching humans closely. He noticed something important. Humans cared deeply about connections. They formed friendships, families, communities. They looked after each other, especially during hard times. One morning, the traveler watched as a person tripped and dropped all their groceries on the sidewalk. Within seconds, 3 strangers rushed to help them pick everything up. No one ignored the situation. No one walked away. They all stopped what they were doing to help. The traveler wrote in his notes, "This is not the behavior of a dangerous species." Later that same day, he observed a small gathering in a park. People sat together, sharing food, talking, laughing. A group nearby was helping elderly visitors find seats. Children were playing on one side, while adults took photos and enjoyed the day. He zoomed out for a moment and looked at the entire planet below. He imagined aliens watching this scene for the first time, without the old rumors affecting their judgment. They would see a species that felt deeply, cared deeply, and created beauty in simple moments. But the traveler also knew humans were not perfect. He witnessed arguments, traffic frustrations, and moments of impatience. Still, these moments were far smaller compared to the kindness he saw. He realized something important. Humans were complex, not purely good. Not purely bad, just complex. This complexity was something the galaxy did not understand. Many alien species lived very predictable lives. Their emotions were steady, their reactions calm, their decisions structured. Humans, in comparison, looked chaotic. But to the traveler, they looked alive. He wanted to know more about how fear had spread so quickly. He searched through several ancient galactic files and found something interesting. A long time ago, a few alien scouts had passed near Earth and recorded audio signals that they didn't understand. Instead of studying them carefully, they sent them to their leaders, who panicked. The leaders warned their allies, and soon hundreds of worlds believed Earth was dangerous. One misunderstanding created hundreds of years of fear. The traveler sat quietly in his craft, thinking about this. He imagined how humans might feel if they knew the galaxy feared them without ever meeting them. They would probably laugh in disbelief. Or maybe they would feel sad that no one tried to understand them. He looked at the planet again. Humans were walking along streets, buying fruits, reading books, feeding animals, sharing stories, exercising, talking to friends. Normal parts of life. Nothing deserved the level of fear they had been given. The traveler knew the galaxy needed to hear the truth, but he also knew that rumors were easier to believe than facts. People preferred dramatic stories over quiet reality. And humans, without meaning to, created the most dramatic stories of all. He pressed a button and began recording his observations. Speaking slowly and clearly, the species is misunderstood. Their broadcasts are fictional. Their emotions are strong, but not violent by nature. They help each other. They create. They feel. They dream. They survive. The myths are false. He saved this report, but did not send it yet. He needed more evidence before facing the council. Outside his window, the blue planet spun quietly, full of life, full of stories, full of emotions. The traveler wasn't afraid anymore. He was fascinated. And he knew this journey was far from over. Every morning on the small observation craft began the same way. The traveler would wake up, check his equipment, and then slowly bring the planet into focus through the cameras. Even though he had been watching humans for many days, he still felt a sense of wonder every time he saw their world turning beneath him. The clouds moved like soft waves, sunlight touched the oceans like silver paint, and the cities lit up with bright colors at night. He could have watched the planet for hours without getting bored. But he had a mission: to understand the truth about humans and to show the galaxy who they really were. He decided that on this new day, he would observe human life more closely than ever. No more studying broadcasts or old records. He wanted to see small details, the kind of moments that showed who humans truly were when no one else was looking. He lowered the lenses and focused on a quiet neighborhood at dawn. The streets were almost empty. Birds were hopping on wires. A few people were walking their dogs, still half asleep, holding warm drinks in their hands. The traveler watched as one person waved at a neighbor across the street. The neighbor smiled and waved back. It was such a small moment, but it showed something important. Humans liked connection, even in simple ways. A little farther down the lane, he saw a person jogging. Their breath came out in small clouds in the cold air. They weren't running from danger. They weren't racing anyone. They were just trying to stay healthy. That alone told the traveler something else. Humans cared about taking care of themselves, even when no one forced them to. After a while, he shifted the lenses to another part of the city. The morning rush had begun. Cars moved in long lines. People walked quickly. Buses stopped and started. Traffic lights blinked. It all looked chaotic, like a dance with no plan. But when he watched longer, he realized there was a rhythm in the chaos. People adjusted to each other, letting others pass, stepping aside, helping someone pick up a dropped bag. He saw a person holding the door open for 3 people in a row. He saw someone slow down their car to allow another vehicle to merge. He even saw a stranger warn someone that they had dropped their wallet. These small acts left a deep impression on the traveler. None of these humans were related. They didn't know each other. Yet they still cared enough to help. He wrote a note. A species is not dangerous if it naturally chooses kindness in simple moments. Later in the afternoon, he moved his focus to a local market. This was one of his favorite places to observe, because humans showed so many emotions here. The market was full of colors-bright fruits. Vegetables stacked neatly, flowers in buckets. Small shops with handmade things, and people moving everywhere. He saw a vendor laughing loudly as he handed a treat to a child. The child smiled so widely that their eyes disappeared into small happy lines. He saw people tasting food, buying snacks, choosing clothes, and talking to each other. Friends met in the middle of the walkway, and hugged tightly. A group of tourists looked around with excitement, pointing at everything. But what he loved most was watching the conversations. Every person seemed to have something to say. Some talked with soft voices. Others used big hand movements. Some looked calm, others curious. Their expressions changed constantly, showing happiness, confusion, surprise, or interest. Their emotions were not hidden. They were painted right on their faces, not to many alien species. This emotional openness looked frightening. To the traveler, it looked human. As the day went on, he decided to observe something different. He moved the cameras toward a school. Children were running around in the playground, laughing, arguing, chasing each other, playing games. Their energy surprised him. They fell, got up, forgot the fall, and ran again. Their emotions changed quickly, one moment upset, the next moment excited. At first, he couldn't understand how humans handled such emotional extremes. But then he saw the teachers watching them carefully, guiding them, comforting them if needed, encouraging them when they looked discouraged. Humans didn't shut down feelings. They trained their young ones to manage them. He wrote another note. The strength of this species lies in their emotions, not in their weapons. As the sun began to set, the traveler moved the lenses again, this time toward a small apartment complex. Inside one window, a family was eating dinner together. They talked, shared stories of their day, laughed, and passed food across the table. Another window showed a person practicing a musical instrument, slowly and patiently. Another window revealed someone watering plants, gently touching each leaf. The traveler wasn't just watching actions. He was watching relationships, connections built through trust, routine, and everyday life. Later that night, he observed a group of friends sitting on the roof of a building. They had brought food, drinks, and blankets. They laughed, shared memories, teased each other, and watched the stars. One friend seemed quieter than the others, and the rest noticed immediately. They nudged them, offered snacks, asked if everything was okay, and brought them into the conversation gently. Humans didn't ignore when someone felt sad. They reached out. This simple moment touched the traveler deeply. For years, the galaxy believed humans were emotionally out of control. But he was seeing something different. Humans felt emotions strongly, but they also cared deeply about the emotions of others. He realized something important. Humans were used to living with emotional intensity. They didn't run away from it. They lived through it. They learned to balance it. That made them resilient in a way most alien species couldn't understand. Close to midnight, the traveler shifted his observation to a hospital. This place showed him a different side of humanity. People walked slowly through hallways, some tired, some worried, some hopeful. Nurses moved quickly, helping patients with gentle hands. Doctors rushed from one room to another, trying their best to save lives. He saw kindness everywhere, someone talking calmly to a scared patient, someone holding a hand, someone offering water, someone comforting a crying visitor. Humans didn't just care about those they knew. They cared about strangers too. As the night grew quiet, he moved his cameras to a peaceful countryside. There, he watched a small house with lights still on. Inside, a person sat at a desk, writing something in a notebook. They seemed deep in thought, sometimes smiling, sometimes sighing. Perhaps they were writing a story or a letter. Humans had this wonderful habit of expressing their inner world through words, drawings, music, and art. The traveler thought about the dramatic broadcasts aliens had misunderstood. Humans had created stories to express emotions, not to show real violence. Their creativity was powerful, so powerful that it had fooled the galaxy into thinking humans were monsters. The traveler let out a slow breath. He had been observing humans for weeks now, and every day brought new surprises. The more he watched, the more he understood that humans were not dangerous. They were simply emotional expressive, and alive in a way the galaxy had never seen. He leaned back in his chair and looked at the planet again. Its lights shimmered like thousands of tiny stars. Its oceans reflected the moon, and its people so emotional, so unpredictable. So kind continued living their lives, unaware that someone far above them was slowly rewriting the galaxy's opinion of them. As he prepared to rest, he thought about the reports he would soon send. They would challenge everything the galaxy believed. Many would resist. Many would refuse to believe that a feared species was actually gentle and complex. But he knew someone had to tell the truth. He glanced at the planet one last time for the night. Even from space, it looked warm and full of life. He whispered softly to himself, as if speaking to the billions below, "You're not what the galaxy thinks you are. You're something far more human." Then he turned off the lights and let the planet rotate silently beneath him. The traveler had watched humans long enough to understand their patterns, their habits, their emotions, and even their fears. Every day he learned something new that helped him break the old legends the galaxy had believed for centuries. But even though his reports were becoming more detailed, the Galactic Council still ignored them. They wanted proof, big proof, something impossible to argue with. He didn't know that the proof was already on its way. One quiet morning, while the traveler was reviewing his notes, an alarm on his ship suddenly began flashing. The sound was sharp and urgent, something he had never heard before. He quickly tapped the controls, and a new screen opened. A large wave of cosmic debris was entering the solar system, a mixture of rock fragments, radiation pockets, and energy particles. It wasn't enough to destroy the planet, but it could cause serious damage to satellites, communication systems, and parts of Earth's atmosphere. The traveler stared at the readings. His heart felt heavier with each passing second. If the debris wave hit Earth without warning, humans would have no idea what was happening. Their electricity could fail, their systems could shut down, and their technology could be damaged. It would create panic, especially because they didn't know other worlds existed. He sent a quick message to the Council. "Earth is in danger. We must help." The reply came moments later, short and cold. "Do not interfere. The species is unpredictable. Helping them may cause conflict. Stay away." The traveler reread the message slowly. He understood what they meant. The Council still believed humans were violent and dangerous. They feared that helping Earth might make humans think they were under attack, or worse, might draw attention to other worlds. But the traveler had seen the truth with his own eyes. He had watched humans help each other during storms, accidents, and disasters. He knew they worked together during crisis. They were emotional, yes, but their emotions didn't make them dangerous. They made them stronger. He couldn't sit and watch disaster strike. Ignoring the Council's order was risky. If he interfered, he could lose his position, his reputation, maybe even the trust of his own people. But when he looked down at Earth, spinning silently below him, he didn't see danger. He saw families, children, workers, people sitting in parks, people dreaming, people trying hard to live peaceful lives. He took a deep breath and made his choice. He pulled the craft out of its normal orbit and moved closer to the planet. He activated the ship's protective field, not a weapon, but a shield designed to deflect cosmic particles. It wasn't strong enough to protect the whole planet, but it could weaken the impact and prevent major damage. As the cosmic wave approached, the traveler guided the shield into position. His hands shook slightly, but he stayed focused. The ship trembled as fragments struck the field. Sparks of energy lit up the dark space around him. Each impact made a loud vibration that echoed through the craft. He held his breath. The wave passed in minutes, though it felt like hours. When it was finally over, the traveler checked Earth's condition. The atmosphere had taken minor damage. Some satellites had shut down temporarily, and a few communications were interrupted, but the planet was safe. Most humans didn't even know anything unusual had happened. He leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. He wasn't sure if the council was watching. He wasn't sure if he'd be punished. But he didn't regret his choice. On Earth, something interesting happened shortly after the debris wave passed. Humans began to notice unusual signals in their satellites. Instead of panicking or blaming each other, they worked together. Scientists came together from different countries, sharing data, theories, and ideas. Experts explained the situation to the public calmly, telling them there was no need to be afraid. The traveler watched as teams repaired damaged equipment day and night. Volunteers brought food to workers. Even strangers offered help to people who were affected by signal outages. Instead of falling into chaos, humans supported one another. The traveler recorded everything. He zoomed in on a group of people clearing fallen branches after a storm caused by the debris. They laughed, worked together, and helped the elderly carry heavy bags. In another place, engineers gathered in a control room, analyzing satellite data with focused eyes. Some were tired, but they stayed awake to make sure everything was fixed. These moments made the traveler feel something he couldn't explain. Admiration, maybe. Maybe even hope. He gathered all the footage he recorded and prepared another report for the council. But before sending it, he wanted to add one more observation. He shifted his lens toward a small seaside town that had experienced minor power issues. People gathered around candles, telling stories, cooking simple meals, and spending time with their families. One person used a flashlight to help neighbors find their lost items. A group of young people helped clean the beachfront, even though no one asked them to dot in every corner of the planet. Humans faced the situation with cooperation, not violence. He wrote his final line, "They are not the danger. They are the survivors." Then he sent the report. The council did not reply immediately. Hours passed. Then a full day. The traveler wasn't sure if they were angry, shocked, or simply ignoring him. He stared at the silent inbox and wondered whether he had ruined his career forever. But then, late at night, a single message arrived. Explain your actions. He knew this was coming, but he didn't want to hide anything. He turned on the transmission screen and recorded himself speaking calmly, almost softly. I helped them because they needed it. I helped them because they are not what we believed. I watched them face danger with cooperation, not violence. I watched them protect each other. And if we continue to fear them without knowing them, we are the ones who are wrong. He sent the message. The council's silence continued, but the traveler felt strangely calm. He looked at Earth again. Life had returned to normal. People went to work. Children played. Markets opened. Streets were busy again. To them, the cosmic event was just a small disruption. To the traveler, it was the proof he needed. Humans were not the galaxy's most feared species. They were perhaps one of the most united when danger arrived. He sat quietly, watching the blue planet glow in the peaceful dark of space. He felt connected to it in a way he hadn't expected. He admired its people, their strength, their flaws, their kindness, and their determination. He knew the next steps wouldn't be easy. The council would demand more answers. Other species might challenge his claims. Many would resist the idea that the galaxy had misunderstood humans for centuries. But he also knew one more thing. This was only the beginning. And he was ready for whatever came next. When the traveler finally returned to his ship after the debris storm had cleared, there was a strange silence in the control room. It wasn't the normal kind of silence that came when the engines powered down, or when the ship was floating in stillness. This silence felt heavier, almost like the whole place was holding its breath. He slowly lowered himself into the chair at the center, The same chair where he had spent hundreds of hours watching Earth from a distance. But today, everything felt different. He replayed the scenes he had witnessed during the disaster. People running, yes, but running to help each other. Lights going out in entire regions, but strangers opening their doors to bring others inside. Emergency teams working nonstop, not caring about danger or exhaustion. Even simple moments stood out to him. A person holding an umbrella over someone they didn't know. A group sharing food with travelers stuck on the road. A family taking in a lost child until they could find the parents. None of these actions were big or dramatic, but they were honest. They were real. And they said more about humans than any exaggerated story or rumor ever could. But he knew the council wouldn't believe him. They had already rejected his earlier reports. They didn't trust his observations because they had made up their minds long ago. Humans were dangerous. That was the accepted story. And anything that did not match that story was labeled as false, biased, or emotional. Still, he couldn't back down this time. The truth was too strong, and the evidence too clear. He took a deep breath and began organizing every recording, every note, and every detail he had collected. He cleaned the audio files, adjusted the visuals, and put them in a sequence so any viewer, no matter what species, could follow the story without confusion. He didn't want the council to think he was trying to make humans look good. He simply wanted the truth to speak for itself. As he reached the final parts of his compilation, he paused at a scene he had recorded accidentally. It was a video of a young person standing outside in the cold, looking up at the sky with quiet hope. There was no fear in their eyes, only curiosity and a strange calmness, almost as if they somehow sensed they were not alone in the universe. The traveler watched that short moment several times, not because it was dramatic, but because it showed something unique humans had hoped even when they had no reason to. That was something he had never seen in other species. When the report was finally ready, he transmitted it to the council. Then he waited. The council chamber was far away, but he could see the live feed on his screen. The room was filled with tall figures seated in a half circle. Some wore metallic clothing that reflected the soft blue lights. Others had patterned skin that shifted color with their mood. A few had glowing eyes that dimmed or brightened like small stars. Despite their differences, they all shared the same expression. They expected to hear something frightening. The traveler remained calm. He didn't exaggerate anything. He didn't use dramatic music or emotional language. He simply showed them what he had seen: humans helping one another, comforting each other, fixing things, giving food, protecting their families, and even smiling during chaos. It wasn't perfect. He also included moments where humans panicked, argued, or froze in fear. But even in those moments, someone always stepped forward to help. When the video ended, the council chamber was silent. One council member leaned forward and said, "Where is the danger?" Another asked, "Why are there so many emotional behaviors?" A third spoke sharply, "These recordings contradict the data we have collected over centuries." The traveler stayed patient and answered, "Because the data was wrong. You are not watching their real lives. You are watching their fiction. Most of your old reports were based on their movies, their drama shows, their stories. Those are not real events. They are entertainment. Humans create exaggerated stories to express emotions. They use imagination as a way to understand life. We mistook it for reality." The council members looked at each other. Confusion spread across the room. One of them tried to argue, but there were transmissions of battles, conflicts, disasters. "Yes," the traveler interrupted softly, "but they were scenes from their films. They create stories about danger, but that does not mean they are dangerous as a species. They worry, they get scared, they struggle, but they also show care, hope, and unity. They are not perfect. No species is. But they are not monsters. The council chamber buzzed with mixed reactions. Some members seemed shocked. Others seemed embarrassed. And a few looked angry, not at the traveler, but at themselves for believing something without questioning it. One of the senior council members spoke slowly. "If what you say is true, then we have been wrong for a very long time." Another added, "We treated them like a threat when they were simply misunderstood." The traveler nodded. Humans act with emotion, not calculation. Sometimes they react fast, sometimes they hesitate. But they care. That is something rare. Their planet is small, their technology is developing, but their hearts are strong. For a moment, none of the council members responded. They were processing the idea that their greatest fear had never been real. The oldest records of Earth had been filled with traumatic scenes that frightened other species. Scenes full of conflict, noise, destruction. But those were fictional stories humans told each other. Never meant for alien eyes. It was almost funny. The traveler would have smiled if the situation weren't so serious. One council member finally stood and asked, "What do you suggest we do now?" The traveler breathed deeply. "Update our records. Stop spreading fear. And more importantly, start seeing humans for what they truly are, a species learning, growing, and trying its best." Another member asked, "Should we reveal ourselves? Should we contact them?" This question made the traveler pause. Contact was a major step. Humans were curious, but they were also emotional. A sudden appearance from another species might cause confusion or fear. It needed to be done carefully, slowly, and with respect. He responded, "Not yet. Let them grow a little more. Let them solve some of their own problems first. But we should prepare. And when the time is right, our approach should be peaceful." The council seemed to agree. They had moved from fear to understanding, even if they were still unsure. The important part was that the truth had finally reached them. As the meeting came to an end, the traveler leaned back in his chair and felt a weight lift from his chest. He didn't know what would happen next. Maybe the galaxy would start to change its opinion. Maybe there would still be those who held on to old fears. But at least the truth was finally out. He opened the window panel and looked down at Earth again. From up here, it looked calm, quiet cities, oceans reflecting sunlight, clouds drifting slowly across the sky. Nothing about it looked dangerous. In fact, it looked peaceful. He watched people walking in parks, driving on roads, cooking in their homes, laughing together, resting after a long day. They had no idea that the galaxy had once feared them. They had no idea that someone far above their world had just defended them in front of the most powerful beings in the stars. And maybe that was for the best. Humans didn't need to know they were being judged. They didn't need to worry about what other species thought. They only needed to keep living, keep learning, and keep showing the same kindness that he had witnessed during the crisis. As the traveler turned off the monitors and dimmed the lights, he felt a sense of calm he hadn't felt in a long time. The galaxy was finally starting to understand the truth. Humans were not the most feared species. They were simply the most misunderstood. After the council meeting ended, a strange quietness spread across the traveler's ship. It wasn't the kind of quiet that came from emptiness. It was the quiet that follows a big truth finally being spoken aloud. For the first time in many years, the traveler felt like he wasn't carrying the weight alone. Someone else had finally seen what he saw. Someone else had finally understood that humans were not the monsters the galaxy believed them to be. He didn't expect overnight change. The galaxy was large, and stories, especially frightening ones, spread faster than facts. But a beginning was still a beginning. And this beginning felt different. It felt honest. It felt hopeful. As he floated above Earth, he watched the blue oceans moving slowly, the clouds drifting like soft waves, and the cities glowing like warm fires in the night. Down there, life continued the same way it always had. People waking up for work, kids going to school, families sharing meals, travelers rushing to reach destinations, friends sitting together and talking about nothing and everything at the same time. They didn't know the galaxy had changed its mind about them. They didn't know they had gone from the most feared to the most misunderstood. But maybe not knowing was better. Humans had enough problems of their own: jobs, bills, relationships, dreams, hopes, worries, love, loss, confusion. They were already trying their best to make sense of the life they lived. Adding galactic reputation to their list would only overwhelm them. The traveler leaned closer to the screen as he watched a small town waking up. A street vendor setting up a cart, a person helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries, a group of kids chasing each other outside their building. These simple, everyday actions made him smile. These were the moments the galaxy needed to see, not the exaggerated stories, not the dramatic misunderstandings, not the fiction taken as fact. He knew the next step was delicate. The council had begun discussing whether they should make contact with humans one day. But contact couldn't be rushed. Many species had strong reactions when seeing someone different. Some reacted with fear, some with curiosity, and some with overconfidence. Humans were similar. They could welcome, question, or panic. It all depended on how the first step was taken. The traveler understood something most council members didn't. Humans needed trust, not shock. They needed a gentle approach, not a sudden appearance in the sky. They needed a reason to feel safe, not threatened. So the traveler decided to prepare carefully. He began collecting more calm moments from Earth scenes of kindness, cooperation, and normal life. Not to convince the council again, but to understand humans even better. He watched a man fixing a child's broken bicycle, not because he knew the child, but because his heart told him to. He watched a group cleaning a beach together. He watched people gathering food for those in need. These small acts created a bigger picture. Humans were emotional beings who made mistakes, but they also had a natural desire to help one another. He kept observing humans through every season. Spring brought people outdoors, touching flowers, feeding birds, sitting under trees. Summer brought laughter, markets, long evenings, and simple joy. Autumn brought stillness and reflection, people walking through falling leaves. Winter brought warmth inside homes, families sharing food, neighbors offering blankets, strangers helping stranded travelers. The more he watched, the more he understood their rhythms. He realized humans were not defined by one trait. They were made of many things: courage, fear, hope, worry, love, anger, forgiveness. But at their core, they wanted connection. The traveler replayed a moment he had seen during the debris storm. A group of people standing outside, holding each other, looking up at the sky, even though they didn't know what was happening. They faced the unknown together. This image alone made the traveler sure that humans could handle first contact someday. But not yet. Down on Earth, a small child stood on a balcony, swinging a toy that glowed in the dark. The traveler watched as the child pointed the toy upward toward space, laughing as if sending a signal. The traveler paused. He wished he could wave back, but he knew the child would never see it. Some days later, the traveler returned to the council for a follow-up discussion. This time, the atmosphere was different. The fear in the room had been replaced by curiosity. Some council members had even started studying human languages, trying to understand their expressions and phrases. Others had spent time learning human music, amazed by the emotions hidden in simple melodies. One council member spoke up, saying, "Humans are strange, but in a good way. Their emotions are strong, but their hope is stronger." Another added, "Maybe they are not dangerous. Maybe they could teach us something." A third said quietly, "They value small things. We forgot how to do that. The traveler listened, his heart fuller than he expected. The same council that once called humans the greatest threat was now beginning to see them with soft curiosity. Still, one question remained. When should they reveal themselves? The traveler took a moment before speaking. Humans grow best through experience, not pressure. They need time. They need to solve their own problems. But when they are ready, they should not meet us in fear. They should meet us with trust. The council agreed. No rushing. No surprises. No fear. Instead, they would observe quietly, learn from afar, and prepare for gentle contact. The traveler was assigned to continue watching Earth, not as a guard, but as a friend. Back on his ship, the traveler looked down at the planet again. The clouds were thick that day, covering most of the surface. But beneath them, he knew millions of lives were unfolding at that very moment stories beginning. Stories ending, people laughing, people crying, people dreaming of better days. He wondered what humans would think if they discovered the truth, that they were not alone, that someone had been watching over them without judgment, without fear, without harm. Would they be excited? Shocked? Scared? Curious? He imagined a future moment when a human would look up at the sky and see something they had never seen before. Not a star, not a plane, but a gentle light approaching with kindness. That moment could change everything. Until then, the traveler would remain patient. Late one night, Earth turned slowly beneath him, showing a side filled with glowing cities. From space, the lights looked like constellations drawn by human hands. Each light represented a home, a meal, a conversation, a story. He wondered how many of those stories would one day be shared with other worlds. He zoomed in on a group of people, sitting around a campfire near the edge of a forest. They were talking softly, laughing at small jokes, pointing at stars. They had no idea that someone among those stars was listening. One of them suddenly asked, "Do you think there's life out there?" The traveler smiled. If only they knew. The conversation continued, filled with wonder, excitement, and a tiny bit of fear. But it wasn't fear of being harmed. It was fear of the unknown. And that kind of fear was natural. Even the bravest species felt it. The traveler whispered to himself, "You are not alone. You never were." As Earth turned again and sunlight began creeping across the oceans, the traveler decided to send one silent signal, not to humans directly, but into space near their planet. A small pulse of harmless light, like a greeting whispered from far away. It wouldn't disturb their satellites or cause panic. It would simply pass by, unnoticed by most, but detectable to anyone paying attention. Down on Earth, a small observatory blinking on a mountain peak detected a tiny, unusual flash in the sky. The scientists there scratched their heads, confused but excited. They would study it for months, maybe years. And though they wouldn't find the answer yet, the spark of curiosity had begun. That was enough for now. One day, maybe not soon, but someday the first meeting would happen. Not with fear, not with confusion, but with understanding. The galaxy no longer looked at humans with terror. It now looked at them with interest, respect, and quiet admiration. As the traveler watched the sunrise spread across Earth like a golden wave. He knew the story was only beginning. Humans were not the galaxy's most feared species. They were one of its brightest hopes. And the universe, for the first time in a long time, felt just a little more connected.